Be nice to the animals. You might have noticed that as someone who's worked with wildlife on and off since 2015, I don't post many pictures of me with wildlife on social media. And it's not that I don't have those pictures, because I do. I have quite a lot of them actually. And in the past, I've definitely shared them, but I don't anymore. And the reason for that is I learned how the images we share on social media can have a direct impact on how people perceive wildlife. And despite our best intentions to educate or inspire, our photos with wildlife can sometimes inadvertently fuel wildlife exploitation. As the world of social media education grows, it's becoming an increasingly important tool in wildlife education and conservation. So this video is gonna give you an in-depth look into why, as conservationists, we need to be so careful about how we conduct ourselves online and how we present wildlife to the general public. This video was really inspired by a presentation by Professor Anna Nakaris, who's done some amazing work with the slow loris, particularly in its use in the exotic pet trade. So I will link that presentation in the description below. I really just wanted to offer a little bit more of a colloquial take on the topic. So the two main forms of wildlife exploitation that we can really link back to social media is unethical wildlife tourism and the exotic pet trade. I'll just give you a very brief overview of both these forms of exploitation and some resources so that you can learn a little bit more if you want to. When I talk about unethical wildlife tourism, I'm talking about activities that force animals to be continuously close to humans or interacting with humans, that showcase animals portraying unnatural or trained behaviors, and are often a result of cruel training practices, druggings, and even illegal poaching of animals from the wild in order to supply the industry. This includes things like elephant rides, tiger selfies, animal circuses, that sort of thing. If you want to learn more about the specific activities, then I have a guide to unethical wildlife tourism that I will leave in the description box. It goes through a lot of the most common unethical wildlife tourism activities and goes through the exploitation involved. In terms of the exotic pet trade, the term exotic doesn't necessarily have a set definition here, but it tends to refer to animals that are a little bit more unusual than our standard pets, like dogs and cats and rabbits. While having an exotic pet itself isn't always illegal, often animals are illegally captured from the wild in order to supply the trade, and they can undergo some really cruel training practices and body modifications in order to be considered safe to keep as a pet. Keeping them can also cause long-term psychological and physical health problems, and runs the risk of passing zoonotic diseases from the animals to humans and vice versa. But if you want to learn more about the exotic pet trade, then I will leave a link to one of my blog posts in the description that will go through the current trade in a little bit more depth and also in relation to social media. How wild animals are portrayed in popular culture has shaped our relationship with and our perceptions of them for generations. Now, while obviously correlation cannot prove causation, there are definite examples of the portrayal of wild animals in popular culture relating to action in everyday life. Some recent examples could be that despite its actually quite strong conservationist message, after the release of Finding Nemo in 2003, the clownfish became the 5th most imported ornamental fish to the USA in 2005. And after the release of Game of Thrones, Dogs Trust reported a 420% increase in the abandonment of wolf-like dogs. In 2014, Paris Hilton was photographed with her pet chihuahua and kinkajou. For those of you who don't know, the kinkajou is a tropical rainforest mammal. After these photos were published, shelters in both Europe and the USA reported an increase in abandoned chihuahuas, and the trade of live kinkajous rose from 397 in 2000 to 2004 to 711 in 2005 to 2009. So what does this have to do with your animal selfie? In this digital age we live in, everyone and their nan is an influencer. Social media has become our main source of popular culture. If influencers post about their favorite sun cream, there's a good chance you're gonna go look it up and maybe buy it for yourself. When you see that Instagram model you love posing on a beach in Costa Rica, then that's where you want to go for your next holiday and you want to get that same photo. Similarly, if you see someone with a picture of a monkey on their shoulder, there's a good chance that you're gonna want to experience that. Especially when you see the thousands of likes and comments these kinds of photos tend to generate. Now, that doesn't mean that that picture of the monkey on your shoulder was inherently unethical. I have had monkeys sit and poop on my shoulder very regularly. Sometimes when you work in wildlife rehabilitation, you are in these kind of situations. But the majority of people who see this picture won't know that. They'll just see the monkey on your shoulder and they'll see this moment between you, and it will look precious and it will be something that they want to experience for themselves. And we'll touch on that a little bit more in the value of context portion of this video. But the main takeaway here is we need to be aware that every time we post a photo, we are directly influencing people. And just like Paris Hilton and her pet kinkajou, people could see what you have and try and replicate that, and they might not have the education or the resources to do so ethically. And then what we see is a rise in demand for exotic pets, which can lead to a rise in abandonment, illness, and even death, and a rise in demand for human-animal interaction in unethical wildlife tourism settings. And it doesn't matter how many followers you have. If you have 40 followers, you are directly influencing 40 people. And any one of those 40 people could see the picture of you and that monkey on your shoulder and decide that is what they want. Another major issue with these types of photos that's again very tied to the idea of being an influencer is that when we post pictures of ourselves with wild animals, we're not only saying that these animals are cute, that they're cuddly, that they're not dangerous, but we are saying that having this kind of close contact with them is normal. Normalizing close contact with wild animals and making that scene not only just safe but desirable damages their protection long term. When close contact with animals is considered normal, it can become incredibly difficult for people to distinguish between ethical and unethical activities. It's part of the reason someone might not think twice when they go and sit next to a drugged up tiger to have a photo taken, because it's normal for some tigers to be domesticated, right? Or why they might not find it a little bit weird when an elephant bends its knee so you can climb onto its back, because some elephants just love being around humans, right? It's one of the main reasons that people don't spot these huge red flags of wildlife tourism interactions that show how unethical they actually are. And this becomes even worse when actually ethical and reputable places are sharing images like this, because it becomes so confusing so quickly. It's why these days a lot of ethical sanctuaries have very strict policies against their staff or volunteers sharing pictures of them interacting with the animal. It's not because it never happens and you're never going to touch an animal while you're working or volunteering there. It's because doing so sends such a mixed message about what we should and should not be expecting from animal encounters. We don't need to cuddle a cheetah to know how beautiful it is, and we don't need a picture touching an elephant in order to appreciate their value in this world. And similarly, we don't need pictures of us interacting with animals in order to engage people in wildlife education. So other than the sort of correlation we might see between popular culture and human action, is there any actual research into how these images affect the public's perception of wildlife? A piece of research into the portrayal of chimpanzees in photographs found that people who viewed a photograph with a chimpanzee just near a human were 35.5% more likely to consider their populations stable and healthy. Not only that, but seeing a human just in the picture, not even touching the animal, increase the likelihood that they would view a chimpanzee as a desirable pet. So even simply having humans in the same photograph as animals can lead viewers to see that animal as less endangered and a more desirable pet. Without the concern of animals being endangered in the wild, people are less likely to think critically before taking one in as a pet, and the desire to have one as a pet but the inability to do so can often lead to people seeking out close contact interaction in unethical wildlife tourism practices. The presentation I mentioned at the start of this video by Professor Anna Nakaris goes into some of the things that she has also looked into. For example, she looks at when viewers see animals in captivity, such as in a zoo. When you look at videos or pictures of this nature, it's uncommon for the comments to suggest that people want this animal as a pet. Whereas when you see pictures or videos of them in close proximity to humans, or perhaps already being kept as a pet, the comments strongly suggest that people do have this desire and do want them as a pet. The response to these two kinds of videos and pictures is very, very different. So this is a very new area of research, and it's something that definitely needs to be looked into more. But there is already indications that what we've been seeing through correlation can actually be proven through science. And for me, that indication alone is enough for me to start critically assessing what it is I post online. I know what you're thinking. As long as I post these pictures and put a detailed caption stating that this is part of rehabilitation, this animal will be released, this is not normal, then everyone's gonna read that, no one's gonna think this picture is promoting wildlife exploitation, and I am covered. Unfortunately, it's not that simple. On social media, our images can be saved or screenshot and reposted online with absolutely no context at all. Not only that, but so many people scroll through and just absorb the images. They don't even read captions, or they read captions and honestly they just decide to ignore them because the feeling or the first impression they've taken from the image is more impactful, and that's what they want to be left with. So often on social media, context is either just forgotten or is lost. And that is why it's so important that the image itself says everything it needs to. If the image doesn't clearly show a rehabilitation process or a medical procedure and you still want to post it, then I would put the context literally on top of the picture. That way it cannot be screenshot or shared and the context lost. Does it look as pretty? No, but that is kind of the point. You really need to ask yourself why you're sharing these images, and if it's to educate and inspire people, then sacrifice the aesthetics a little bit and make sure that context is heard. If you're posting just for yourself and you don't want to sacrifice the aesthetics, then there's a lot deeper issues going on there. So what do I want you to take away from this video? It's not that you can never again post a picture of a human and a wild animal. That's not what the rule should be. What I do want you to do is, before you post a picture like that, just ask yourself these following questions. Is the context clear without having to read a caption? Does it make it look like close contact with wild animals is normal, safe, or desirable? What ideas about wildlife could this give someone following me who has no background education in conservation? One of the greatest challenges we have in conservation education today is how to make wild animals accessible and inspire people to want to protect them without sacrificing their long-term well-being or creating a false narrative about what they're actually like and what people should expect from them. So when we post on social media, we have to be incredibly critical and selective, and we have to make sure that we are always thinking first and foremost about how this will affect the animals long-term. It's not easy. We're probably going to make a lot of mistakes when it comes to online outreach and education because it is still fairly new in the grand scheme of things. But I think we can start making animal selfies a mistake of the past. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope that it can start getting us thinking about how we present ourselves online. If you have any thoughts about how wildlife is presented online, then please leave them in the comments. I would love to discuss them with you. Be smart, be nice to the animals. Anyway, thank you for watching. I hate doing outros, so I will see you in the next video. Bye.